Hello and welcome everybody to a mythical, mysterious version of the Buy Round podcast. I'm joined by leading journalist Michael Chammas, but also Charlie White, who is the brainchild of this episode today, where, Charlie, I'll let you explain to our viewers. I have a rough understanding about what is about to take place. I've made some notes, but this is your brainchild, so over to you, my friend.
It is my brainchild. I thought you were going to call me a leading journalist then for a second when you introduced me. I thought that was a big mistake to say
that's what's on your LinkedIn, my friend. Yes. Here at
NRL identity.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep. But no, this should be a very good show. So basically, to peel back the curtain a little bit, I wanted us to rank the NRL clubs from first to last for being incompetent. So which are the worst run clubs in the game from first to last? You guys thought that's a bit harsh. So we've brainstormed and we've come up with an idea called the 10-year ladder. You know, Chammas came up with the title of that as well, by the way, so I won't take credit for it.
You're all about the hate, aren't you? Like, let's criticize.
We're all about hate.
Mate, could you imagine if I came in here and ranked the teams from 1 to 17 on how shit they are? Mate, honestly,
it would be disastrous.
It would be disastrous.
Yeah.
And our Tigers would probably still finish last. I'm joking.
But we've done 10 years later. So it starts in 2015, and we've included this season as well. So really it's 10 and a bit years. But we've got notes on every club, and we're going to find out which clubs have been run worse for over the last 10 years, because the ladder tells a good story. And 1 year, you might have a bad year, but over 10 years, it's a pretty good sample size of how good your club's going.
I'm looking forward to the big reveal.
Yeah. At number one or number 17?
I think I've got a fair idea about who will be number one. I think I'm pretty confident knowing in who number 17 is or should be.
Yeah. Well, it should be based on...
You don't need to be a genius to work that one out, but there's some clubs that... Yeah, I'm interested to see how the 10-year ladder shapes up for.
And I will say this, the Dolphins should be in 17th if we're going off points. However, we've decided to aggregate their season. So we've only had, this is the third year of the Dolphins now.
We're averaging this.
Averaging out,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Third or fourth year of the Dolphins. I believe it's the third year of the Dolphins, 2023, 24, 25. Yes, good maths. So we've averaged them out. So they're not going to be sitting last. And we're going to go sort of through a few of the storylines that went wrong over the years, some decisions they've made wrong, some decisions that clubs have made right. It's not all going to be negative because there's some teams doing very well as well.
Okay, I like it. I like the concept. It's good.
Do you want me to start us off with who's sitting in last?
Yeah, let's
Are we
go.
going 17 to 1?
Yeah, I think we go 17 to 1. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, okay.
Drum roll.
It is, of course, the West Tigers.
Oh, you Tiger Masher.
Closer than you think. But yeah, they are sitting in 17th. I mean, it's been a tough 10 years for them. I mean, a few things stand out. Losing the Big Four, that breaking up. Ivan Cleary obviously leaving for Penrith. The Michael Maguire era. The Tim Sheen's brief stint as well. And the Benji Marsh there. It's been a tough 10 years, Chammy, for the Tigers.
It has. So it's at 85 wins, 169 losses for the Tigers. That's a rough decade. And no finals appearances in that time as well. Yeah, some huge moments in that 10 years. You go back to the Big Four, the decision of Tedesco and Moses and Woods to leave the club, and then Ivan coming in. And that was seen as a turning point moment. And I honestly believe they had turned the corner. And we saw in Ivan's first year how well they went. They didn't make the finals, but they were on the cusp. They finished 9th. And they used to make fun of finishing 9th. Oh, the Tigers always finish 9th. What they'd give to finish 9th these days, the Tigers. But when Ivan walked out on the club, I still think that's one of the biggest stories of the decade, to be honest. Not just for the Tigers, but in rugby league. What happened and unfolded that year, the effects on Anthony Griffin and the flow-on effects on all the clubs, and then what Penrith were able to do on the back of it, huge. And they never recovered from what Ivan Cleary did to them. Good luck to Ivan. I was very, very critical of what he did at the time. It was terrible what he did to the Tigers, and they're only just, you can even argue they haven't recovered from it. But for him as an individual and for his family, what a move it's been. But the Tigers, honestly, the players that he signed suited his football, the way he wanted to play. I think you remember he went on that spending spree. He bought Madalino, Packer, Mbai, Reynolds, and he brought back, I'm pretty sure he brought back Robbie, brought back Benji. And then they're having success. It looks like they're going to have success. He leaves, and the club goes in a completely different direction, like the complete opposite coach to Ivan Cleary, and they bring in Michael Maguire. And that was just a rude shock for everyone at the club. And Madge went in there saying the roster's good enough and we can make the 8. And it just got worse and worse under Michael Maguire. The players just didn't like it. The more they lost, the more paranoid he became, the more ruthless he became. And in the end, they stuck with Michael Maguire longer than they probably should have. But it was to prove a point that they weren't going to just move on from coaches. And when he left, it was left for Tim Sheens to pick up the pieces with Benji, and we know where they are now.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving, the West Tigers. Obviously, retention, recruitment has been a huge issue. You're talking there about, and I'll come back to that, but the Ivan Cleary moment, I like to think about sliding door moments and alternative universes. And just, obviously, Ivan's gone on to win 4 premierships at the Penrith Panthers. If he stays at the Tigers, does he transform the club? Is that coach enough? I know he made initial inroads, but could he have taken them any further? Did he reach their capacity with that coach, with that roster? Because that very same roster wasn't long before, respectfully, they tanked. Retention, recruitment, always been an issue. I think those issues have now been resolved, mainly on the Luai acquisition and the Appy acquisition. I recall.
Have you not seen the headlines this year? Galvin, Talon.
Well, yeah, that's
still a problem for them.
In terms of keeping hold of players, but I can remember when Latrell Mitchell was leaving the Roosters, and where he went next, obviously, most clubs were looking to see how they could get him in. It was a bit of a scramble, and the Tigers put together a deal from memory to make him the highest paid player in the game, and by some margin, and he knocked it back. Now
that was because of Madge. That was because he didn't want to play under Madge at the time. And with all due respects to Madge, that when they met, I don't think Latrell wanted to go, and you'd heard what he was like, the reputation that he came into the club with. And if you go cast your mind back a few years ago, that was a massive talking point in the game. Madge's inability to recruit players because no one wanted to go and play under him at the time. And that turned, I guess, with what he did at New South Wales. But that was a big storyline around Madge's tenure, that he couldn't bring the players there because he was either going to burn them to the ground and people couldn't. Adam Reynolds didn't even want to go there. He went to Brisbane. It didn't even happen with the Tigers. But I reckon the real sliding doors moment is not the fact that Ivan left, is that they were actually thought they were going to get Nathan Cleary. That was the talk, that Nathan was going to go to the Tigers.
So they were going to be able to poach Nathan to be coached by his dad.
Yeah. And in the end, Nathan turned around to Ivan and said, mate, I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to leave Penrith. So Ivan took it upon himself to take that decision out of Nathan's hands and make it himself. And that's the real sliding doors moment. We talk about a dynasty, a legacy, a future immortal, 4 premierships in a row, potentially 5 this year, to 4 wooden spoons on the trot. Well, no, they're not going to. They're not
3 in a row. They're probably not going to
avoid it. So, but that's the sliding doors moment for me. And I still remember Reedy. He was at the time saying that it looked as though Nathan was going to go to the Tigers, and that was a big, big story. And he was. Wow. He was thinking about it. But in the end, he stayed at Penrith, and the Tigers, they've been. I think the decision to appoint Sheensy was the wrong one.
Mm-hmm.
And Benji's a risk. Now, Benji's evolving as a coach, but he wasn't ready for what he was thrown into.
Yeah.
But that was through necessity, and that's another sliding doors moment. They went after Cameron Ciraldo. They sat with him at the club. They pitched the vision to him. Cameron Ciraldo was thinking about taking that job, given it real strong consideration. Then Gus comes along. The Bulldogs get him. And that is potentially a generational coach they just missed out on.
Well, they've had, I did a little bit of research the last 10 years. They've had 5 coaches and a couple of interns as well. And in that time, it was Taylor, Ivan, Maguire, Sheens, and now Marshall. So they're not afraid to make change. And you mentioned the point about they left it too long with Maguire. But obviously, they've been burnt in this last decade with Moses leaving, Tedesco leaving. They're the 2 key ones. I know we talk about the big 4, but really,
Brooks stayed for most of it.
Brooks stayed for most of it.
And Woodsy didn't kick on after leaving the Tigers.
But those 2 are like next level, consistent state of origin, top of the game, top 3 in their position players for that decade.
But also players that they didn't even get to see the best of, like Pappenhausen and
Yeah.
Addo Carr, and even recently, like Stefano not wanting to be there. Sean Blaw, the way he's kicked on, that's the problem. Is the players who you thought, they're not going to make it. Sean Blaw, Tigers could barely get a run. He's absolutely killing it at the Storm at the moment. So it's been a difficult decade for the Tigers. You don't need to be a genius to work that out. But there's been so many moments where you think they could have rewrote history if they got that right with a couple
Do
of
you
decisions.
think there's any world in which they could have convinced Tedesco to stay? I'm trying to think back, because remember he signed at Canberra.
Yeah, he backflipped
But,
on
like,
that.
But was that a better offer? Was it a better offer from the Roosters, or he just didn't see any green shoots at the Tigers?
No, he wanted. He wanted to win a premiership.
Yeah.
And he'd been at the club for a while, and there was some. The way it was told to me is that the big 4, the Tedesco, Woods, Moses, Brooks, would stay at the club if Jason Taylor was moved on. So the club did that. They moved Jason Taylor on under the assumption they were going to stay. Then Ivan came in, negotiations went a bit south, and they left. Remember, they pulled the offer to Mitchell because he was carrying on, and Isaac Moses was, because he was managing all 4 of them at the time. And that was how that played out. So I think the Tigers, I feel sorry for them because there's a number of things that they've tried to get right. With those big 4, thought they would keep him. Ivan wasn't their fault. They'd made the right appointment. And it takes 5 years to recover. And hopefully they're finally on the track to something with Benji.
I think they're probably still in recovery. There's optimism there, but still it's not good. Like, I don't care how you sugarcoat this, but when 2 of the hottest prospects again choose to leave. For, again, allegedly reasons around, one was game time, which I think maybe could have been massaged, and the other being the ability to develop into fulfilling your potential, getting to your capacity.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where they end up in 10 years' time. We could be doing this in 10 years' time, boys. And it could be all about Galvin and De Silva leaving. Who knows? Now, this team's sitting in 16th. They avoided the spoon by a draw. A draw was what stopped them from getting...
In the 10-year ladder.
In the 10-year ladder,
Wow.
It was a draw that got them off it. The Gold Coast Titans sitting in 16th. A shocking 10 years for them. Like, terrible. They had been through a ton of coaches. Neil Henry, Garth Brennan, Justin Holbrook, Des Hasler looks like he's done this year. The Garth Brennan era was awful. They had some issues with Jared Hayne. It is sort of no surprise that they're that low on the ladder, is it, Chammy?
No, it's not. I think it all started with Jared Hayne when they brought him to the club. The thing with the Gold Coast Titans is they've always tried to buy their way out of trouble. Not just on the field, I guess off the field. They brought Mal Meninga in. They hoped that he would turn the club around. He brought David Fafita in, paid massive money. That hasn't worked out. It feels like they've tried to buy success at that club. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but it feels like a soulless football club, that the Gold Coast Titans. And even now with Des, who's a proven winner, they can't get it right. Their signings along the way have been, like, if you look at the players that they've brought into that club, they've brought in a lot of good players, a lot more than the Tigers have.
Yep.
In terms of recruiting players, the Tigers obviously nurtured the guys that we mentioned before with Tedesco and Moses and whatnot. But actually buying players, like with, the Hayne at the time, Fafita, Tino Fasua-Malawi, what a pickup he was from the Melbourne Storm. And the ones that they've brought in, they've had some good players there. But for whatever reason, when they brought Bryce Cartwright, like, he was touted as the next best thing. And then it fell away, and they've brought in player. Peachy at the time was a representative player. Even the coaches that they brought in, Garth Brennan, so highly regarded for what he did at Penrith. Justin Holbrook on the back of Super League premierships. Des Hasler. It's not like they've skimmed, like, tried to get by on the smell of an oily rag. They've invested financially in trying to have a successful football club, but for whatever reason, it hasn't been the case.
I wonder, when we speak about those players that were bought in, were they bought in the wrong positions? So an edge back row for me can have an effect on a game in a really good team and can win or lose you a game. I think for an edge back rower to live up to their hefty price tag in a poor team probably isn't the best strategy. So if I'm near the bottom of the ladder and I'm looking across and who's available, do I push all my chips in on an edge back row and a middle forward? I don't know if I do.
You can't. You can't.
I think you've got to go and address the 6 and the 7. Really the 7. That then can bring out the best in a person like a Sean Bloor. I think that's why Melbourne get their system so well, because their spine position enables players in certain positions to excel, because they make people look good. And as good as the example recently you brought up of Sean Bloor, he's playing well. One, it's an environmental thing, but second of all, and probably most importantly, it's a personnel thing. The combination that he plays with,
Playing on the outside of Cam Munster, like that's the side he's on. What a dream as a back rower.
Yeah, and I think with the Titans going so heavily into forwards that do find it difficult to inject themselves into the game. Like, take nothing away, Fafita at certain stages has been beyond destructive, but I just think it's a position to pay someone too much in without the help that he needs. And then my second point on the Titans is, a lot of people talk about team culture, DNA. I don't know if the Titans know who they are. And I think geographically speaking, you can't take what Melbourne do and put it in the Gold Coast. You can't take what Penrith do, put it in the Gold Coast, the Warriors, Canberra. I think the geographical situation of the Gold Coast is it's a transient town. It's a holiday destination.
Is that a bit of a cop out for the club though?
No. But instead of trying to lean more into we've got to drill down on being super dedicated, it's maybe they need to go into that of we're a bit more chilled here. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not using that as an excuse that you think you're on holiday when you're in the Gold Coast. Man, I can remember when I lived in Cronulla and walking down and pinching myself and going, oh my God, I am not on holiday here. I'm here to work. The players at Sydney Roosters would have the same experience living in Bondi. It can feel like a bit of a holiday. Do the Titans not lean into that? Because that is who they are. That is the people they represent.
Yeah, there's definitely a cultural issue at the club, no doubt about it. But pure football, they've had 36 halves, 36 5/8 or halfbacks in these 10 years.
Wow.
And we talk about the big money they spent on David Fafita. You got to remember, it goes back to Ash Taylor, Jimmy. They gave Ash Taylor so much money, so much pressure. They gave Jared Haynes so much money. All their well, not all, but a lot of their big signings, and they've thrown the kitchen sink at blokes, haven't worked out for them. And that is a judgment decision that you look back at the people at the club and think, okay, yes, we took the risk. They've got it wrong more times than not. So
Ash Taylor was touted though as one of the, for them to, at the time, he was touted as being one of the great future halfbacks of the game. When they gave him that money, there was other clubs in for him at the time, wasn't? Is that right, Chammas?
Oh yeah, but the same as the David Fafita situation. I think they gave him $1 million a season when he was just coming in. $1 million 7-8 years ago. That's a lot of money. Of course, you've got to make those. You don't want to lose players, but also you have to be responsible in what you're doing. And I
guess they're in a situation where they have to overpay.
Yeah,
and like the Tigers were, they have to overpay. But it's an attractive proposition. Like I say, that the lifestyle in the Gold Coast,
but they're irrelevant, Jimmy. They're the ugly stepsister to Brisbane. They don't dominate the media landscape. They're somewhat irrelevant in that area.
That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you could lean into certain players to go, mate, it's pretty chilled up here. You know,
Yeah.
you can almost be a normal person.
It is changing the Gold Coast though, in terms of like the style of city and town it is. Like there's a lot of like small businesses there now, entrepreneurs and that type of thing. It's a fitness is massive there. So that cruisy side of it is changing a little bit. So maybe that club can change as that city changes as well and become a force. But anyway, 16th, shit decade. The next 10 years doesn't look overly bright for them, especially if Tino Fasuamalawi leaves. In 15th. Now, if we did this decade after 3 years, they would have been wooden spooners by a mile. It's the Newcastle Knights. They get the spoon 3 years in a row during this decade, 2015, 2016, 2017. 2016, they have one win all year. One win. It was
In 2016,
one win. Like, and I remember that year, they didn't look like beating anyone really. I think they got that win maybe like even towards the end of the year, one of the last games of the year. Some good periods though. Mitchell Pearce coming in, Kalen Ponga coming in. You know, really when you think about Adam O'Brien, 4 final series in 5 years, like he's done a good job at the Newcastle Knights to get them from where they were to now be, you know, sitting in 15th of a decade is not great though.
Well, it was this decade begins from I looked it up yesterday. Tinkler left in 14, and he left them in a hole.
Absolute hole.
He really did. Like, and it's difficult to know if anybody but him is at the root cause of the last decade for the Knights, and we all recall those years of struggle that they, like you say, one win in a season for a region that is all rugby league is cruel and unfair. But that was the somewhat risk that they took when they went from I think they were a member-owned club into a private entity, which sometimes works, and the promise of Tinkler's millions and the change within the club. I think he did back the club, but then ultimately the finances weren't all they were cracked up to be. So I think that's a fair indication of why the Knights are where they are, but they've still got some work to do. I think it's probably a little bit harsh on O'Brien, that the treatment that he's getting when you consider where that club has come from, and maybe when you consider the facts of the last 10 years. Now I know, and this theme will come up in around when we review each and every club, around owners or decision makers looking at action versus inaction, and that I'm talking about the moving on as the coach. When results don't go your way, it's seen, and people do go into self-preservation mode. It becomes about saving your job. So if the CEO or the key decision maker doesn't start acting and move the coach on, they get heat. They get the heat. And maybe it's a patient game, because I don't know where Canberra sit on this ladder, but they kept Ricky Stewart in through the good times and the bad. And maybe that's the best way to, because most teams will cycle up and down. It's all, obviously Melbourne are the outliers. The Roosters probably one of those as well, although they're going through that phase now. But I don't think it's entered the decision makers' thought process to move on Robinson, because they go, no, he's in the best position to know where the football club needs to go. And Canberra stuck solid through Ricky for a couple of seasons there, where they've missed out on the 8. And I just wonder if that's a good example of Robinson and Stewart, two clubs like the Newcastle Knights, that maybe, hey, just hold back here. He's the person to cycle us out of this downtrend at the moment.
Well, but to be fair, what have they had in that period? 2 coaches? Like Brownie into Adam O'Brien, pretty much. Isn't that over? I think it's at least 9 years that they had those guys. So they haven't had a whole lot of change,
No.
the Newcastle Knights. Yes, they started the decade poorly with 3 wooden spoons. Their turning point was Mitchell Pearce and Kalen coming. That was the turning point for the club. And it probably hasn't been as significant as they hoped it would be. Definitely not from a Kalen point of view. They've invested so heavily into him. four they made what? If you look at the Titans and Tigers, how many final series did they make in that time? The Tigers definitely none. Did Titans make a final
Titans,
series?
I remember they made one definitely because there was that Eastern Masters, was it, who had to pass the ball on? Or, and they didn't pass the ball on. Titans would have beaten the Roosters. That was, I think, one of the COVID years, maybe 2020. I'll double check that now.
Considering that the Knights have made 4 final series, they're pretty low on the ladder. It says how bad they've been in the other years. So, the concern for them is where the next decade looks like with the juniors, the players that they've lost along the way, the ones their recruitment and retention, guys that they give a chance to and then they leave and go better elsewhere, like a Kurt Mann or they lost Jesse Ramian and like
Kai Pierce-Paul, Rio Thompson.
Saifidi's gone. Like
it seems like unfortunately for the Knights, certain players use it as a stepping stone, and I know that happens in the Premier League where players will come from, often from overseas. They'll land in the Premier League to get their foot in the door, but they're always using that club as a stepping stone for
to get to Tottenham.
Not quite get to Tottenham, but
get to Arsenal.
To get to one of the to the bigger clubs. We see it happen quite regularly over in the English Premier League, and I think that the Knights have got a bit of that tag about them. Like, I'll use them as a way to showcase my football, and then I'll move, and then hopefully I'll get a better offer. Or play well, that better offer comes, and then I'm out the door.
But Adam has done just because he's done a good job now, like there's nothing wrong with being the coach to get him to a certain point. Like I think if they do move on from Adam O'Brien, he's going to be the guy that turned that club from a perennial wooden spooner into a consistent-ish football team. Like they've been consistent-ish over the last 5-6 years. Maybe they need another coach to take them to that next level. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It doesn't mean Adam O'Brien can't coach. I would have no issue Adam O'Brien walking to another NRL job. He's done a decent job. But sometimes maybe time for a refresh is good for all parties.
But until they lose this tag of being a club that players will take a punt, like a Kalen Ponga, for instance. Like you could, we don't know what the future holds for him, but I think when we look back at his career, it might be he used the Knights as a stepping stone.
I don't know.
Sorry. Maybe that's harsh to frame.
Maybe in the
it
Kalen front, probably not. But I get your point for a lot of other players. Yeah.
And maybe with O'Brien, because he's been hamstrung by this. You look at the people that go out the door, the Thompsons, the Dom Young, that go for
but is that
better opportunities. It's like that's a mark of a coach that can keep them up consistently, despite the fact that he knows that he's getting cherry-picked each and every year.
But is the players you just named, are they leaving because Adam O'Brien isn't inspiring them to play for him as well? Like if you were a free agent now, would you get excited to go and play for Adam O'Brien?
You're going to play with Caleb, not to play with Adam, to be fair, to play under Adam.
Yeah, but obviously he's doing something in terms of their defensive record, which is the hardest part of the game to do, which is being sensational.
But he's an attack-minded coach, apparently, Adam O'Brien.
Well, whoever's in charge of the defense it's working, and
that's Brian McDermott.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, are you going for the coach and the charisma? Probably not. But there's something there that you go, well, hang on, how's he getting the best out of this? Kai Pierce-Paul, Dom Young, two relatively unknowns from England come over. Like, he's been part of the Kalen Ponga development story. Bradman Best's play state of origin. Like, there is something there with O'Brien. Whether or not he's the charismatic coach, obviously not in the same echelon as, you go to Melbourne for Bellamy, or you go to follow, you go to Souths to play for Wayne.
Yeah.
He's not in that echelon of people. I'm not suggesting that. But I think it's important to know that he has something about him that develops players to then get in that shop window.
The team in 14th, boys. It's the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs with 103 wins, 150 losses.
That's hopeless, Jimmy. Weren't you there for the whole decade?
No.
How many years of this can you take blame for?
Let's see. If we're starting in 15, but we made finals that year. 16, we made finals that year as well. 17, we didn't. We were pretty close, and then I was out the door.
This era, it started reasonably strong, like you said, 15 finals, 16 finals. But then the back-ended deals, the Raylene Castle mistakes, it all goes pear-shaped for a long period there. Des Hasler walks out the door. Obviously, you get Dean Payne there for a bit. Then Trent Barrett, which is a disaster as well. And then along comes Cameron Ciraldo to salvage the last couple of years of this decade. As a Dogs man, Jimmy, the last 10 years it's been a struggle.
It has, and looking back and thinking, there's some seasons that almost were doomed before a ball was kicked. I'm respectfully looking at the roster. It lacked hope.
But where did it go wrong, Jimmy? Because it started at 15, 16, you guys were looking, a great period under Des, administration was flying, everyone wanted to beat the Bulldogs. Where did it turn? Like, was it Josh being let go to the Tigers? Was it, the change in administration? Where did it start to unravel?
Well, probably doesn't take, you don't need me to say it was in and around the roster management and salary cap mismanagement. And at one time, I think they would have been paying, well, to be fair, Penrith won a comp when they were paying plenty of money to other clubs to have their players, but the Dogs would have been maybe 15 to 20% of their salary cap was being paid, and that's just a guess, but roughly speaking, of their salary cap, 4 players to play at other football clubs during that time frame, which speaks to just how bad the salary cap mismanagement went. And it's not fair to blame one person.
Raylene Castle should get a lot of the blame.
Well,
honestly, probably arguably Australia's worst sports administrator. That's not even unfair to say. Stuffed up Rugby Australia, stuffed up the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, has had times and other codes, and everywhere she's gone, it's been a disaster. In all honesty,
look, I don't feel comfortable putting Raylene in that castle because it's someone who I had a good working relationship with. But look, it's hard to point the finger, but there was probably fractions within the decision-making culture and structure at the Bulldogs, and allowing deals to get passed when they shouldn't have been passed, or without the ability to say no, and too much trust being given to certain people that things are going to be okay. And I think when I think back to Des, to Raylene and Ray Dibb, all three would like that time period over again and done things drastically different, because it did fund. But that said, some teams, like no doubt the Storm, always cycle at the top, but some teams they plan to go into windows and they're not interested in long-term sustainable success. And you can see how you go down that road of, hey, if we go all chips in, and we're in a salary cap sport where the spread of talent should be even, but if we can look to manipulate that to get better players for a short period of time, and then the wave comes to crash, we go out and then it's somebody else's mess. And I guess as a sports fan, do I want sustainability, or do I, and maybe not reach finals almost like a Newcastle now, or do I want to see my team go chips in and then I'll deal with the shit years as well? And maybe that's how they looked at it. That's me trying to justify it on their behalf. It's
hard for Jimmy to, he obviously has personal relationships with some of these guys that are there. But if you look back, no doubt in the world there was a breakdown between a loss of trust to Des Hasler from the board and the chairman Ray Dibb. They brought him to the club. He was great for him, got him to a couple of grand finals. But the pursuit of that, just going that next step, I think Des started to make some decisions that the club just lost trust in him, overpaying for players, back-ended deals, and Raylene started to move towards Des, and as a result, the board then started to lose trust in Raylene. I think it's harsh what you said about Raylene, that you don't do the job the Bulldogs did without having any clue about what you're doing. But I think Des, in the end, they didn't trust him and he didn't trust them. Yeah. And that's when the decision started to be made. The board chasing Kieran or Woodsy, and people not being on the same page anymore. And that's when it started to unravel. And I think I think that was brought about by the 2 grand final losses that you guys had previously, and Des not being able to get over that final hurdle. And you overpaid for Eastwoods, your Cassianos, and Tony Williams, and all these guys. And then when it came to keeping the guys who you needed to keep, like Josh Reynolds or yourself later on, it wasn't able to be done. And I think the fans then reacted. The fans then started to say, well, Ray Dibb needs to get out the door and we're going to get change. Whereas Ray and that board did a lot of good things for the club.
Yeah,
did they stuff up? Of course they did. But then the club needed to trust in them to oversee the change, which was moving on from Des and rebuilding. They didn't. They wanted to continue to have sustained success. And they brought in the Andersons, and it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And it's not until now with Adam Druisi and the board there and John Curry, they're finally starting to have that success. And I'm not Gus and I don't get along, but bringing Gus into that club and rebuilding, and the most pivotal moment is Cameron Ciraldo, and trusting in Cameron to completely remove the guys that didn't buy into what he wanted to do. And it's taken them 2 years to do that, and look at it now. And I believe they're stronger than ever, Jimmy. We didn't see the scenes and the crowds that we're seeing now back then when you guys were playing. Like, it's the club support, the being in the doldrums for so long has actually created this euphoria that we haven't seen before.
Well, that's it. Sometimes you need those lows to appreciate the highs and bring everybody back. And obviously, I think things post-COVID have changed fan experience. I think there was a lot of suffering there for a lot of people in a lot of domains of life. And it feels good now to be a part of the Bulldogs. It's that we are proud to be a Bulldog. We're proud to be loud and we're proud to be seen. And it's great what they've done at the club. I'll go back again to the beginning of this. And Dale Finucane being allowed to go was something that on a personal level was really upsetting. I struggled to comprehend how and why the club were allowed that. Dale was someone who I really, really loved playing alongside, and maybe with the makeup of the forward pack, maybe with Dale and too similar, but I couldn't I couldn't justify a reason to allow him to go, because he was everything that was plastered over the walls at Belmore. He lived and breathed that every single day. I really don't know why he was allowed to go. That was a big, big error. And when you think about why the Sharks brought him in, it was about you think about how Bellamy speaks about Dale Finucane. That was a bad call, like a bad call.
And the Barber thing, Jimmy, the Barber stuff ripped the club apart, didn't it? That was previous to this decade, but the ramifications lasted.
Well, they did. Yeah, they did. And when you think about the player and his on-field ability, like you build a team around him, and then you plan. I imagine that the club was planning for him to be the fullback for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like, why would you go anywhere else? And unfortunately, that what happened away from the field was difficult for a lot of people to process, get over, and it was hard because the club were in a really, really difficult position where and look, I'll say this with confidence, the club did all they could as far as addressing that. I think they did all they could legally and morally. They did all that they could, but then there was consequences to that. I think just going back to the upside of the Dogs, Gould coming in, there was some difficult years there where I think they were on a hiding to nothing. And I know what it's like when you're in the four walls of a club you train really hard and you think, oh yeah, we're going to give it a red hot crack this year. But I think probably deep down they knew seasons were going to be difficult. Got to give a massive shout out to Josh Jackson for keeping that club away from the spoon. Like, if there's one person that they obviously did identify they couldn't let go, it was Jacko, and he didn't want to go anyway. His loyalty to them, when you look at the trajectory of Finucane, who left to Melbourne, and the career he had versus Jackson, who stayed, like it's a cruel game sometimes, and Jacko paid the ultimate price for his loyalty. But then coming back into it, Ciraldo, the scouting of him. I know he was being talked about as the next cab off the rank, the next.
He was
one
the
of
hot commodity. I don't think they
hot-
can get too much credit for handpicking Cameron
No,
Serrato.
no, no, but-
Chammy just spoke about
yeah.
before. Tigers were desperate for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, I think obviously he had his pick of clubs.
Yep, he did.
So that he was sold on, and then obviously, we forget Josh Reynolds came back. I mean,
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Josh Reynolds came back from Hull.
yeah.
So if it wasn't for you, Joshy,
You wouldn't be here.
but also, I think Gould, Serraldo, and then Stephen Crichton has accelerated the trajectory that the club is on.
Yep.
And I put a lot down to him.
Probably in 10 years' time, if we do this again, they're probably going to be one of the teams in the top 4. You would assume with the way things are heading. All right, working up the way of the ladder. Next up, the St. George Illawarra Dragons, Jimmy, another one of your clubs. Now, while you were there, some good results. A couple of finals appearances with Mary McGregor. The last few years have been tough, though. Obviously, the Anthony Griffin period wasn't great. You had things like Barbecue Gate. I mean, one of the big things,
Barbecue Gate,
which
yeah.
on a more serious note, was the Jack de Belin situation and how that played out. But Jimmy, you were here for a few years. The St. George Illawarra Dragons, not the best decade.
No, it wasn't. Go back to that 2018 season, and like I say, parallel universes. I'd love to see where we would have been if Vaughan, Widdop, and Sims are fit for the finals. That is, I think, if you go back and look at the ladder for 2018, it is tight as cramp in the top 8. I think there was 2 points separated first to 8th. We started like a house on fire. The Dragons had a reputation for that. We fell into a bit of a hole, but we finished 7th from memory. But we were 2 points off the top 4. It was so tight in there. I think the Roosters won the comp that year. We'd beaten them on Anzac Day. I remember Coach Robinson said we were the benchmark, and that game changed how they approached their football for that season. So, but unfortunately, injury got us in the end. We lost Widdop in Brisbane for week 1 of the finals. We lost Vaughan in a training ground accident, and we lost Tarek Sims, who was playing State of Origin, Vaughan playing State of Origin as well. Tarek Sims in that final against Souths, where Reynolds got 3 field goals. You just wonder about what if the injury gods had been kinder at the back end of the season. You just don't know, and it's something that I think about often.
Just on that, Jimmy, 1 win separated 1st and 8th. It was 34 points, team in 1st. Warriors in 8th with 32 points.
Yeah.
Well.
That was an incredible. Like, we talk about how wide open the comp is now. For that to be the facts, like, did the Roosters? Did they finish top? And
they finished top.
8. They lost 8 games.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, that was a crazy season where anybody could have beat anyone on their day. I'll talk about the demise of it after. Chammy, what are your thoughts?
Well, look, I'm a Dragons fan, so it's honestly, this goes back to after the premiership in 2010. It's the club's fallen away completely. There was a little period there you were talking about where with Paul McGregor where you felt like they were building towards something, but it's similar to Adam O'Brien. I think Paul McGregor was the coach that did a good job, got him to a certain point, but he was the coach that get him to that point, and then someone had to come in after that and take him to the next level. And I think the appointment of Anthony Griffin was a shocking call by the club.
Yep.
And they paid the price and are still paying for that price. People unhappy at the club, lost a lot of people, a lot of juniors. It just became an unhappy club. And I feel like you can't put this all on Griffin. It's been happening for over a decade. The club has lost its identity. And it's been a very from where we were as a football club, winning that premiership in 2010, Wayne leaving. They bought a premiership. They obviously brought everyone in to do it, but they still should have built on the back of that, and they didn't. And I said the Anthony Griffin appointment, it was such a wrong call by the club. They didn't do their homework at the time, because if they did, no one at Penrith was speaking glowingly of Anthony Griffin. And by the end of their 2 years, they realised they'd stuffed up, and they gave him his 3rd year, and they went into that. I think it was what year would have been 2020. 23. They went into that season. He was off contract, and they told him before a ball was kicked, they were going to go look at other options.
Yeah.
That he still was a chance of getting an extension, but they were going to do their homework. That was a polite way of saying, we don't think you can coach this team, and we're going to try and find somebody else. But it's been very disappointing. The Ben Hunt signing, you got to look back at the Ben Hunt signing. Paid a lot of money for Ben Hunt, never quite reached the heights that they hoped. Maybe 1 or 2 years at the start. But in the end, Ben Hunt was just there because of the page. He didn't want to be there anymore. And they let him go this year. They let him go early. And everyone's criticising Kyle, and I don't, whether it's warranted or not. The reason they are in that situation is because they let Ben Hunt go, because they were in an untenable situation. So, decade of disappointment, Jimmy, definitely. The Dragons should not be where they are. And unfortunately, Reedy made this point the other day, they are not the club, the brand they once were.
No, they're not. But they could be. But I think there's certain things are in the roadblock that whether or not they can be removed is...
What, political roadblocks?
Is,
between St George and Illawarra, or...?
I think there's a few... Well, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I think there's some roadblocks there. That
people, individuals?
Matt, look, I'll just leave it at that, roadblocks, but I think...
Name names, Jimmy. Come on, man. This is the buy round.
And then, when you talk about that 2010 premiership, and that's them going chips in, and you deal with it, and you dine out on that.
Well, that's what you were talking about earlier. That was an example of chips in. Let's win a premiership, break the drought.
And then we'll dine out forever.
Yeah, but you can't.
I know you can't, but you convince yourself that you can, or then it's somebody else's problem.
But you know what?
But for the past decade, look, I spoke about the 2018 season. I remember that finishing and being incredibly optimistic about 19 and being like, we've learned so much from this. Like, they probably one game they lost that I think was had a bad effect on them that could have helped them. Was the 2017 final game against the Dogs, which they lost, which allowed the Cowboys to come in. If they'd have got some finals experience then, that would have helped them better off in 2018. So that was a bad loss in a nothing game for the Dogs. They lost that. Anyway, 2018 happened, full of optimism, like I say. And then 2019, well, the club were in a completely brand new situation. And I still, to this day, don't know how it should have been handled. The no-fault stand-down policy was introduced and it was not grandfathered, which is unprecedented, that a new rule comes in and is backdated.
Yeah,
like I've never witnessed anything like that, and the playing group were really angry about it. Really difficult to process, as well as seeing a friend and a teammate go through that. Like it was difficult, and we'd have multiple meetings around how to best manage it, but we just didn't know because no one had been there. There's no cutout. There's no cookie cutter approach to a situation like that, and people felt different ways about it. And we didn't know how to deal with it, and it was very emotional. Like emotionally, the emotional energy it drained from the group was huge, and it's not an excuse, but it's a fact that we played the Knights in Mudgee. And there was a court hearing on the Friday. I think we played the Saturday. And the court hearing went in the favour of the NRL. I think it was, or a decision was made in favour of the NRL that it was going to be upheld. And we were just, like, we'd almost got ourselves convinced that
he'd be back.
He'd be back. Yeah. And he didn't, and we, like, Kalen Ponga, as good as he is, like, he was playing against, like, grandparents. Like, we were just, we had no, we were just flat. We just had nothing.
And he was so important from a football point of view to what that team was building as well over the years. So you had to completely reshape. And the difficulty of then keeping a guy on your roster, not getting rid of him, still paying him. Do we get rid of him and then bring somebody else in? What if he gets off?
Yeah. Well,
the club was in limbo for a number of years.
You know, it was bizarre to say, oh, you'll get salary cap exemption for a player of similar value. It's like, what, you think we're just going to go and sign Jake Taburovic? Like, he'll just come.
Yeah.
Like, because that was where DeBellin was playing State of Origin football, and rightly so, deservedly so.
Yeah.
Like, he was in, I remember him he'd played the year before for Origin. They won that series. And then there was like a Blues camp that he didn't go to. But like, who else were we going to get in at that time to play lock forward?
On the no-fault stand-in policy, though, I think the NRL viewed it as a great success, and probably rightly so, because it has given... You look at how good they're performing commercially over the last few years and how much trust brands are putting in with the NRL, with how they handle off-field scandals, because there was around that time, there were so many off-field scandals. It was that summer where it felt like one thing after another was happening. And like, you look at... See, we've got some footies here. There's a bank called Westpac Plus on the rugby league footy. If they don't handle those situations well, you don't get brands like Westpac, brands of that level, partnering up with the NRL. So overall, it's a big success.
Charlie, 100% agree. And I get that this is an incredibly complex situation where you've got the commercial and business interests of a sporting business, because that's what it is, that relies on perception and public image and what they stand for and what they don't. But then on the flip side of that, I've got the personal level where I'm dealing with a teammate and other footballers that are highly, like, chances are at a premium. Like, and I understand that can sound quite selfish, but chances are at a premium. And to lose one of your best players for something that he is maintaining his innocence over, and and also furthermore how society is structured, and it didn't come around by accident, that you are innocent until proven guilty. That is one of the fundamental cornerstones of Western civilization. It's what it is founded on. And at the time, I certainly felt like that fundamental right was being taken away. Now I understand why. I get it. I do. And now that it is implemented, there is no going back. And I edge towards the fact, and now I'm out the game, I'm out of that bubble, I edge towards the fact that there is a bigger picture at play. But at the time, I certainly didn't see that bigger picture. It was very, very difficult to manage that. Like, as a leader of one of the leadership group, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we've got no previous examples where now it's become, it's become commonplace, and we understand the process, and clubs are well with, they'd be smart to know the process to go through, but it was so new at the time.
Working our way up the ladder, the New Zealand Warriors sitting in 12th spot. An up and down decade. I think the COVID period really stands out. Something that they were hard done by for a few years there, with, being here in Australia and the strain it put on the players. The Stephen Kearney years were not great. Nathan Brown came in, but really it's looking positive moving forward now for the New Zealand Warriors.
Yeah, you can't underestimate the effect that COVID would have had on this football team, and the sacrifices that they made to keep the game going. I think that's what sums up the past decade. And they are trending very much upwards now.
You have to, of all the teams we've discussed so far, they're the only one that gets a pass mark for me, and they're not even in the top 8 over that period. But as you said, what they contended with over COVID, but also the inroads they have made with the New Zealand just the New Zealand fan base in general. Like, I think I saw 26 of 29. Their last 29 games, they've sold out 26 of them. That's incredible. And the inroads they've made with rugby union players and convincing people that it's just not a one-sport country. Rugby league is on the map in New Zealand.
Yeah.
If they can have success, can you imagine what that would do? And they're closer than they have been in a very, very long time. And I think the Andrew Webster appointment has been great. They had a disappointing year last year, but if you look back at the last decade, and the players have been, like Sean Johnson, what an ambassador, what a role model he has been for the game. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, like, these guys have been the figureheads of the sport, and they've done a great job for them. And I think if you look forward, the future is bright. We saw on the weekend Leka Halasima. Like,
freak.
What a player he's going to be for a long time. So I think that the future is bright. It's a pass mark because of the way they've engaged the community, the way they've rallied around each other. And I think because the future is so bright.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And yeah, they'll be forever due a thank you for the sacrifices that they made.
Yeah. Andrew Webster, amazing appointment.
Yes,
Cameron George.
Big appointment. Yeah, from Webster, likely 2 top 4 finishes in 3 years is pretty good.
Is incredible, yeah. And Cameron George, you think about the level of how good he is as an executive. The All Blacks came knocking. And he's turned them down.
Great operator.
Yeah, he's turned them down to stay at the New Zealand Warriors. That's how good they're going. Up the ladder now into 11th. Now, this team obviously wouldn't really be 11th, but we've averaged it out. It's the Dolphins. They've started reasonably strong. It was tough for the recruitment at the start. They weren't given very long to recruit these players, but Wayne Bennett came in, and I tell you what, Christian Wolf this year taking over, he looks like he's taken the Dolphins on the field to another level.
Yeah, I think the start of their NRL life comes down to one person. It's Wayne Bennett. That's what it is, and they it looks as though the Izzy Katoa signing is one of the best pieces of business, the best talent ID, the best potential. Like, looking at young players and finding out which have got the potential to kick on and giving them an environment and an opportunity to. That is the best bit of business done by a football. I reckon we could look back at Katoa and say, whoever signed him, that's the best deal. And obviously there's a lot of big transfers have happened in this past decade. The Dolphins in that 3 years, I reckon the best bit of business is Katoa. It's hard to argue against that. In terms of the price they paid, the value for money, the ceiling on him that he keeps on smashing, it's incredible.
That's their Thurston moment. That's what that's their Thurston. With Cowboys getting him from the Bulldogs all those years ago and building the club around him. That's the Dolphins' Thurston moment. And I think you got to remember, like, Katoa at Penrith. And I know it closely because he played junior footy at Glenmore Park Brumbies where my kids play, and he's always been a superstar. But when he signed with the Dolphins, they signed him on the basis of what they saw in a highlights clip that was sent to him. They had never seen him play. They watched a highlights clip of him. And Peter O'Sullivan and Wayne Bennett said, we need to sign this kid. And the moment they did, Penrith decided, well, you're not part of our plans. They basically wiped him from their junior rep program for the rest of the year until, if you remember that year, Penrith rested players in the final round, which was ultimately the first round of the New South Wales Cup finals. So they had all their New South Wales Cup players play NRL, and they needed to fill the Jersey Flegg players up to New South Wales Cup. And in the end, Katoa went in, played Jersey Flegg, killed it. They ended up playing him in New South Wales Cup, killed it, and then won in the competition, I think, in Flegg later that year. And then he's off to the Dolphins, and they paid him nothing. But in hindsight, it was nothing. But they paid him overs. I think it was like 250, 350, 400. And Peter O'Sullivan and Wayne Bennett then extended him, upgraded and extended him. That is, we're going to talk about 10 years, in 10 years' time, the biggest moments of that period. It will be. That's the Thurston moment right there, for sure.
Yeah. It's been incredible, like, even from a commercial standpoint as well, how well they perform. Like, you think about the Gold Coast Titans as an expansion club, the Dolphins are already, like, have a much, much brighter future. Yeah. And, like, it's been a great success so far. Into 10th, the Manly Seagulls, boys.
10th. No, that's a failure from Manly. 119 wins, 132 losses. With the team they've had, 2 draws in that period. With the team they've had over that period, they should not be in 10th position, Manly. Like, decade of Trebojevic is a decade of Cherry Evans. It's, that's a failure in my mind.
This is the beginning of the 10-year deal, isn't it? For DCE, with the backflip. So, it is. I think when you assess everything at Manly and with the roster that they had, that would be deemed as a big disappointment. Big disappointment.
Yeah.
What are the biggest moments in that period? I think off field there's been turmoil all the time with the political turmoil at the club. The Trent Barrett era, the rainbow jersey, that
big fallout from that. Yeah.
Big fallout from the rainbow jersey. It's been they've had good patches, but I feel like their ladder at the moment reflects their position on the 10-year ladder reflects where they are at the moment. It's just like, yeah, they're good when they're good, they're bad when they're bad. They should be better than what they are. They sit lower than what they should be. That's a disappointing decade for Manly. They should have, to be fair, unless Charlie's done his maths wrong. That's surprising to me.
I'm surprised at that.
Are you sure you've calculated that right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I'm pretty sure.
119 wins, 132 losses.
Yeah. Do you want me to run you through their ladder positions from the last decade?
You can do that. Was there any Brett Stewart time? And I can't remember 15. Was he still playing then? Or was Turbo the whole time? I'm shocked. I'm actually shocked by
I'm
Manly.
really shocked.
Is it that surprising though? Like, what have they done?
Yeah, I thought-
what have they done during
well,
that period? They've won a couple of finals games over the last 10 years. Like, they've not really done much of note. Like,
Well,
they had a good team on paper.
Yeah, they've been consistently okay. They've been consistently okay.
They're one of those teams that have a couple of really big games in them each year. And it always seems to be against the Storm, funnily enough, that they got.
So here's their decade, boys, just to put it. To 2015, they come 9th. 2016, 13th. 2017, 6th. 2018, 15th. 2019, 6th. 2020, 13th. 2021, 4th. 2022, 11th. 2023, 12th. 2024, 7th. And this year, they're sitting 7th. Is that a... Like, Of course they're sitting there. They've been up, down, all over the place. It's been a poor decade for them.
I gave the Warriors a pass mark in 12th. But I'm giving Manly a failure for what they've done in the decade.
And you think about the rainbow jersey, Hasler Part 2, that exit, the court battle. It's a lot of off-field issues there.
Yeah. I think Tony Mestroff coming in has been great for them.
Yeah,
Cable's obviously did a great job with Greyhounds. He's coming there now. And they've got a bright future with their young players as well. But we'll work our way the ladder because in 9th, the team that just misses out on the 8 is the Parramatta Eels. Now, it's kind of like the opposite for Manly. Like, they're a bit higher than I thought they'd be. Obviously, they had a grand final and they've had some good moments. Bringing Mitchell Moses in 2017 was big. They've had some off-field stuff though as well, Chammy, with salary cap drama and...
I think that's... they get a pass mark for me.
Was that
Parramatta.
in 16, the salary cap drama?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that screws you up for the start of the decade. It really does.
From where they started to where they have finished. Like, I know that this year's there's been a rebuild happening, but like a decade is Brad Arthur's tenure almost, pretty much. And I think that in that time they played finals football more times than they didn't. They made a grand final. They have somewhat addressed the concerns. Well, they did. The off-field, like the club was a basket case off-field, and then being forced in a situation they were on the back of the salary cap scandal. They've cleaned up their act. And I think that is a massive, massive tick for the club.
Yeah.
And Brad, I think you got to give Brad the pass mark. Like, making a grand final is no easy feat.
Do you think they missed their window?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
When that window came, like, I know they would have gone, they did put everything into it, but I think it when people are talking, this is their window, is it 2022? But they made the grand final.
2022, they made the grand final.
Yeah,
they were in the finals from 2019 to 2022, that 4-year period.
And that was that window, and then they missed the finals a year after.
Yeah, but do you know what I've noticed? The rise of player agent power has taken over in that period, and on the back of success, those particular agents and those players maybe got to their heads and maybe became a bit greedy, and everyone started to want to cash in rather than pursue the success like Penrith did. I think they missed the trick, and they started to pay overs for people. Everyone wanted player options. We could talk at the player option.
Yeah.
And all that did, selfishly, they looked after themselves, which they're entitled to do. But as a club, and they shouldn't have done this. They shouldn't have allowed them to put the future of the club in the hands of the players, and that's where it went wrong.
Yeah,
the club had set itself up, but in the end gave in to player power and player agent power. And that shut the window on their premiership.
Yeah, that's fair.
The first team to make the top 8 for the 10-year ladder, and they've won a competition in this period as well.
I'm looking here. This is controversial, but you've got them in the 8. Cowboys 124 wins, one draw, 129 losses, and the Eels equal 124, one draw, 129 losses. So why have you put the Cowboys in the 8?
So the Cowboys have had an extra bye.
Oh, you've given them the spot of the 8 on the bye.
Yeah, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles, I'm afraid.
No, I don't like
Same
that.
record, but the Cowboys getting because they've got a bye.
Or
they've had an extra
alphabetical.
bye. No, 285 points.
Now, do you know what? If you were a real producer of this show and a
Yeah.
guy who was a real host,
Yeah.
you would have worked out the for and against over that period.
Yeah.
But
I
they can't
agree.
because they've got the bye. They've got a bye. They've played an extra game.
You just remove the buys. The buys shouldn't be calculated.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. But okay, same record. Cowboys there was
You need to go
joint
back
8.
into a count back later on for and against before this goes.
Well,
to
I'm
there.
going to guess the Cowboys for and against this year has been a dreadful, so they just miss out. But the Cowboys, they start the decade with a premiership, 2015.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
You know, Jonathan Thurston retires end of 2018.
Get the final in 17 off the back of that
Yeah.
loss from the Dragons we spoke about against the Dogs.
Yeah.
Which I wonder if that did more harm than good. Really good feel factor. And I think back to the similarities between the Dogs making the grand final in 14. Was that actually really something that would have been better not happening? I don't know. Obviously, I've got fond memories of that game, but for the Cowboys to make the grand final, well, sorry, not in terms of losing it, but it was a great experience. The Cowboys making that final in 17, that gives you runway, that stops you analysing the process. You think, oh, well, we've done something right. They got into the finals off the back of Dragons losing, and then
The Michael Morgan insane period.
Yeah, they just got hot at the right time, and you wonder how much damage that actually did to them for the years coming up.
I think they lost their way the last couple of years, but overall it's been a pretty good decade. I think they are at a point now where they've got to make a pivotal decision about which direction they're going in next. Around the coach and other players happy there because they're not. That's a roster that shouldn't be where they are on the ladder at the moment.
Do you think you talk about their Thurston moment? Do you think they got Thurston by letting Kalen Ponga go?
Ooh, that was their the Bulldogs Thurston equivalent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
that's a huge.
And
huge-
maybe not. Maybe they move Thurston on a year early and give him more money, but also that fullback spot. I think it was Lachlan Coote.
Yeah.
At the time that
kept
they
Lachlan. That's right. That's right, Jimmy. Yeah.
So, like, is that something that they look back at and go, well, we probably should have moved someone on a little bit earlier to keep Ponga at the football club? Because I think...
And look at the ladder where the Knights are. That's the problem. You look at that 10-year ladder and the Knights are in 15th. Yeah, as an individual, yes, but the Cowboys are still in that 8 over 10 years and the Knights aren't.
But do you think that could have led them to a higher position on this ladder had they have kept Kalen?
It's not just Ponga as well. Kikau's another one they let go. I know Cheese had sort of off-field stuff when he was up there, but he's another player that fell through the cracks. There's a few other players that have...
They did manage to land Tom Dearden in that period.
Yeah.
That was a big signing.
Yeah.
Drinkwater, big signing.
The Tamalolo deal as well.
Oh, yeah.
When you think about the 10-year deal, I think you could argue at certain years he's added value for money, and he was probably being paid for things that he did in the past. But I think the past few years, it's caught up that it's not that Tamalolo can't play, but he can't play at a level that you think he's $1 million player.
I think Todd Payton shattered his confidence when he started, mate. I think that was... And he was looking to leave the club. They might deny that, but he was looking to get out. He wasn't happy. I just think the whole thing wasn't handled very well with Tamalolo. I think that he wasn't afforded the respect that he'd earned.
Yeah, that's...
10-year deal. Yeah, he was paying hundreds for a long time. He's the best forward in the game. And at one point, you're talking about a potential future immortal the way he was heading. And I know it hasn't gone well for him in the last few years, but you forget how good Jason Tamalolo was.
He was.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that situation could have been handled differently. Yeah, he might not have been the player he was, but maybe it wouldn't have deteriorated at the rate he did if you put an arm around him.
That's right about management of him and the personality that he is. But then, do you think they were wrong to give him 10 years? Especially playing middle forward.
No,
Especially if they knew he was a player that could be a bit temperamental mood-wise as well. Because that's what he's like now, by all accounts, isn't he? He's not the best influence off the field at that club.
He was killing it. I get the security of a 10-year deal, but there's so many unknowns.
should it be allowed, Jimmy? I know we're getting off topic here, but should there be a cap on what the NRL allows? 7 years is the maximum contract you can sign beyond the current date. Because all you're doing is setting your club up for potential disaster.
Well, that's it. You need to have strong administration. You need to have strong administration. Go, well, look, we're not interested in that because we just can't because there's too many unknowns.
But look at Dylan Brown, for example. I'm sorry, we're going off topic, but
Fine.
he had 7 more years to run at Parramatta. And like, it's not like he had a 2-year deal. He had 7 to go. I think it was 2031 or something that he was contracted to.
Yeah.
And because he got an extra few years and got to 10, that's what got him over the line. And he wanted Parramatta to go to 10. Clubs shouldn't be asked to go to 10 if they're already at 7.
Yeah, maybe there should be some legislation. That is another story for another day.
Why
maybe
would you even want 10 years of your player? I couldn't think of anything worse than being locked in for 10 years. Like,
illusion of security.
Yeah.
The illusion of security. And as a player, I get how you would be attracted to that.
Yeah.
But it's And you're saying he talked to it.
Apparently now he's not the best influence off the field because obviously he's not overly stoked with the situation.
Well, you have no freedom. You have security, but you have no freedom. And things change, coaches change, situations change, new teams come into the competition. You can't forecast for 10 years' time. Yeah. Maybe you're onto something there for the round table, actually. That's a good idea. Yeah. 10-year deals off the
plenty
table.
of those if you want.
Yeah, beautiful. 7th, Jimmy. 7th, South Sydney Rabbitohs. They start off with Michael Maguire as their coach. He leaves. Anthony Seibold comes in. And it's amazing. Like, they look great under Seibold, but then Seibold uses a stepping stone to go get the Brisbane Broncos job, which we'll talk about later, I'm sure. Wayne comes in, goes well under Wayne. They met the grand final, obviously. And then
Latrell.
Yeah, they get Latrell in from the Roosters. A lot of positives for South Sydney. I think Bunnies fans will have wished they've won a premiership, though, in this 10-year period. Yeah,
well, of course. I think I made some notes here and moving on from, and I spoke about keeping coaches in jobs, but the move on from Madge and the premiership win, and also some of the players that left, Benny Teo, Sam Burgess, and then the rest of the Burgess brothers, like there were 2 huge influential figures in that dressing room, and what it took to play under Madge during that 14, and what it took the players to do and what it took from them eventually. I think they paid a bit of a price for that. The Reynolds thing springs to mind.
We have to talk about that, I think, in depth, the Adam Reynolds situation, because that is disastrous for them.
I think the result is a poor one. But did they examine those processes? Did they do enough homework? Because sometimes you make decisions that you think you calculate them to be the right ones and they turn out wrong. You know, Broncos, for example, with Dearden, he needed a change. You know, there's plenty of retention and recruitment mistakes made along the way, but did they examine their processes enough? I would say not.
I've always, with that, when the Adam Reynolds thing happened, I've always maintained that South Sydney were doing the right thing by the club by only like everyone forgets they offered him a contract. It's not like they weren't, but they wanted to go 1 year because they had their reservations. Now, obviously, in hindsight, he's played a few more years at Brisbane, but it's not like he hasn't been injury free.
Yeah,
and there was no reason why they wouldn't go 1-1-1 and continue. He could have still been playing at Souths. So I felt like in that situation, Adam Reynolds. I wish that Adam Reynolds thought, you know what, I can understand why the club is reluctant, and I'm going to prove them wrong, and I'm going to keep signing 1 year deals. That's where I think it's lost sometimes, the conversation that Souths didn't want Adam Reynolds. They did. They just wanted to make sure that they didn't jeopardise the future of the club by giving him a long-term deal. And I can understand that.
2 years isn't a long-term deal, though.
Yeah, but
that's all he wanted was... he was happy with 2. They would have taken 2.
That would have been the median. But that's when things started to get ugly. At the start, it was a 1 year deal. I can understand both arguments, but I'm saying that's South Sydney's viewpoint at that time is, well, we stuffed up with Sam Burgess because we had to medically retire him. We did the same thing with GI. Maybe we've got to take our lessons from what we've done in the past.
You're right there. You forget that the medical retirements of players, and that comes off their books.
Yeah,
you wear that for a long time.
I'm not saying it was the right call. I'm just saying what's lost over time is the fact that they did want to keep him, and I feel like Adam Reynolds maybe could have done more to stay, and I wish he did, and they may have got there. And the other big thing in that period, Charlie, is what unfolded 2 years ago, 2 years ago, when Sam Burgess walked out in the club on the back of the Latrell Mitchell special treatment drama. That was a massive story. And that we spoke previously about sliding doors moment. The club had two choices there. They either take the word of Sam Burgess and realise what he was saying was that this was a negative impact on the club and slowly start to wind up the Latrell, Mitchell, Cody Walker era, or go in the other direction and back Latrell and Cody. And that's the direction they have. And unfortunately, through no fault of their own, injuries, well, some of their own, some of the suspensions for Latrell, he would put his hand up and say he stuffed up. But a lot of injuries have prevented those guys from taking South Sydney higher than 7th on the 10-year NRL ladder. Because
it probably cost JD his job as well.
And it did,
it did, didn't it? And when you think of their poor last couple of years, it's probably affected their position on the 10-year ladder this year and last year in particular. Not a lot of wins.
I think the storylines out of Souths in the last 10 years, huge. The signing of Wayne Bennett on its own is massive.
Yeah.
Then what happened with it's been a big 10 years for
Big
Souths.
10 years, no premierships, unfortunately. Working up the way at the ladder, another team with no premierships. They've made 2 grand finals, 2015 and 2023. It's the Brisbane Broncos.
What could have been for the Broncos when you think about they were so close in... people think about 23 and how close they were. 15.
They were home.
They were
10 seconds
arguably...
to go.
No, I think... No, they
They were leading.
They were in a better position in 15 than they were in 23.
With time on the clock, yes. I'd say yes. They led by what? 6. They led by 4 points with 10 seconds to go. Last play of the game.
Morgan, Carl Felt.
Mate, Charlie, I'm confident in saying that they were in a better position in 15 to win than they were in 23.
You're saying as a overall of a season and what they produce as a football team, or are you saying in that grand final?
In the grand final.
Well, if you're leading with 10 seconds to go, you take that over leading with 5 to go.
I'd say, yeah.
It was. They were up big in 2023, obviously,
and I think they performed better they had a shocking first half in that GF in 23. They were awful in that first half. Penrith should have blown them away in the first, but they didn't. But you think about what could have been, and like the difference that would have made, and maybe the potential start of a dynasty, and maybe Hunt stays. And from 23, if they'd have won that one, it would have had a better effect. Kevy's still there. They have a better 24. They arguably start to really build something.
It's like in terms of drama, I know we went through Souths, but the way that period with Wayne Bennett was, how toxic it became, getting rid of him out of the club, running out of town, the overlord of Brisbane, and doing it in the way that they did with little respect towards him. And then getting the blokey and Anthony Seibold, overlooking Kevy for the job, the local hero as well. And the bloke comes in and takes you to a wooden spoon. Like, it's an unbelievable storyline. And I think that, while Brisbane have finished 6th on the overall ladder, I still don't think that's where they should have finished in that decade with the players that they have had at their disposal.
Yeah. Like bringing Reece Walsh back, huge move from the Warriors, allowing him to go in the first place. I mean, that was where they were at, I guess. But they've got a spoon in the mix, which is just arguably unheard of.
Even like bringing Matt Lodge back to the NRL, that was a huge story at the time. There's so much, but you think about the resources the Broncos have, and I think there was an article that came out recently talking about the financials for both clubs, for all clubs. Like they have so much money, they should be winning premierships every decade. The Brisbane Broncos, the position they're in.
Nearly 2 decades since they've won one now.
Yeah, they'd be hugely disappointed with their standing on the 10-year ladder, especially with some of the teams that we haven't named so far.
Well, this team sitting in 5th, bit of a surprise. The Canberra Raiders.
Wow, that's a big effort.
The grand final in 2019, potentially a grand final this year. They look fantastic.
5th, wow, that's high. That's higher than I thought they would be, Raiders.
They've been consistent.
141 wins, 1 draw, 112 losses. I would have thought they were a 50% team. I wouldn't have thought they were as high as that.
Just a footnote.
Footnote.
This ladder has been put together by Charlie White, so any complaints, if any, it should be directed.
I'm telling you,
if we've got this wrong,
I'll run you through the Canberra Raiders ladders. The last one you guys questioned me on.
No, it's fine. We'll get into the Raiders. Look, Ricky Stewart kept the helm. I think there's something in there around cycling teams about having one person know the ins and outs of the football club, exactly what's needed, staying patient. Obviously, he's a legend of the game. He's afforded a bit more time down there in Canberra because they probably they're not a headline grabbing football club, respectfully, and that's been to their detriment sometimes in terms of recruitment because of but he makes that environment work. He knows the workings of that football club. He knows what gets that community and those players ticking. And I think one thing that can't be ignored is the fact that they've gone to England for their recruitment, and it's paid off. It's paid dividends. It's been a really intelligent approach to recruitment in going to England.
Top 4 3 times in the last decade.
That's a pretty good effort. Yeah.
Even if you think about some of the scandals Ricky's been able to manage, though, there was talk about the players being off Ricky for a period. There was talk about Joe Tarpany being off Ricky. The fact that he's been able to bring them all together and get through tough periods, like you spoke about a bit with Adam O'Brien, that's going to be the key thing of this decade, is sticking with Ricky Stewart.
Yeah, it is. It would have been easy to, they missed the finals here or there, or you think that window's gone after Hodgson moves on and Bateman. It's like, oh no, we need fresh ideas. Well, no, he was the best person to see that change through, because he knows exactly what that football club in that location needs.
No, I would have thought 2 years ago it would have been Canberra well within their rights to move on from Ricky. That's what I thought at the time, I thought he's done a great job, but it's run its course, and it's time for somebody new. But you talk about the fact that the teams that keep coaches for a long time can have a sustained success. The reason Canberra do that is because they have people in administration who have been around for a long time, people on the board. Don Ferner as CEO. So that creates a stability in the whole of club. And the other team that I think of is Roosters. Their stability off field, that creates the stability and the confidence in the coach where you have a long-term plan. So I think Canberra, that is, I didn't think they would be in fifth. I didn't think they'd be so high. That's a great decade for the Raiders.
If you include this year, they'll have made finals 6 of all the seasons through this decade.
Pass.
2 prelim finals and a grand final. Great effort by them.
You got honestly, I know I am English, but the fact that they've gone there and bought players from the English Super League, British lads, I think has been a real feature for them.
Definitely.
You look at the impact of Hodgson, Bateman, Williams, now Smithies, Nicholson as well. Like that.
I think Nicholson, they've got him to come back into the team. They've actually been dealing with injuries this year as well. Like, it's been a great effort by the Canberra Raiders. Top 4 teams then, boys, and all of these teams in the top 4 have won premierships this decade. It's the Cronulla Sharks, 2016 grand final winners, 152 wins, 1 draw, 101 losses. Great decade for them, really. They had some off-field stuff with the Shane Flanagan peptide stuff and all that drama, but for them to be sitting there is pretty impressive given all that.
Yeah, obviously the 16 premiership comes to mind, the efforts that went into that, and then for them to be a top 4 over the past decade is pretty remarkable. They dealt with a lot of experience moving out the door. They identified that with Finucane and McInnes. Credit to the Sharks, and probably one of the big moments in their last 10-year history is overlooking or moving on from John Morris and going Fitzgibbon, because that created a lot of headlines at the time. Chammy, you remember that? That was. They were between a rock and a hard place, really, weren't they? Because Morris was well liked, good coach, but then Fitzgibbon was available from the Sydney Roosters.
Yeah, I think we talk about storylines over the last decade. It'd be hard to go past the Asada scandal and the impact of that.
Yeah,
that could have completely ruined the club. Like, when I say ruined the club, I mean completely vanished from the face of the earth, been replaced in the NRL or lost all the funds, whatever it could have been for Cronulla. But they have managed to become a successful football team in terms of consistency. Very good decade. They probably still feel like they should have, in the last 2 or 3 years, achieved more than they had.
Yeah.
And the final, they won. They broke the drought. So that, maybe I'm being a bit harsh. That's a great decade for Cronulla.
You know what? I'm not sure where Penrith finished, but they've ruined it for a lot of clubs. Like, in terms of winning 4 in a row,
the bar is a lot higher.
They've just, not only the bar is a lot higher, but because clubs don't usually go back to back, it creates space for other teams, and just Penrith have blocked the path.
The Sydney Roosters, boys, 156 wins, 97 losses. Two premierships, 18-19, always there and thereabouts. Like, I know some stuff recently maybe hasn't gone according to plan with recruitment and stuff, things like that, but a fantastic club. that has produced some great results.
Yeah, the first team to go back-to-back in some time. You can't underestimate the influence and impact of Cooper Cronk. I think the fact that he played in the grand final despite being injured says it all, and just the level of importance that he held in that playing roster. But yeah, one of those teams that, I mean, you look at the 10-year ladder, and we forget sometimes the injury crippling seasons that they had. I think it was 2021 where they had like 3 or 4 ACLs. The Brett Morris where he retired, then 24 again. They were probably
retirement, Jake Friend retirement. They were earlier than expected. Yeah.
They had some really, really difficult years with injuries, but still managed to make finals. It's pretty remarkable.
I think recruitment and retention has been the biggest thing over the last 5 years, which has caused that inconsistency after winning the premierships. Like the guys that you mentioned, it's hard to plan for shock retirements like Gordon and Friend, losing Latrell in that period as well. And then you think in the last few years, some of the decisions they've made, and they as a football club think, I'm sure they'd look back and think, what were we thinking? I think Matt Lodge probably, that didn't end well. Was Brandon Smith the right fit for him at the club? Terrell May, letting him go immediately. There's a number of other ones that I could that have happened in the last few years. Chasing David Fafita. Yeah, they had him and then he backflipped. So there's some things there. They were going to let go of Angus Crichton and then
letting Latrell go. Maybe it was more important to them than they realised. They haven't won a premiership since Latrell left.
And Roger leaving in that decade. I'm pretty sure in that decade. Was it before? No, it would have been in that decade. Yep. So there's recruitment and retention has always been big with Roosters because they're a club that traditionally buys their players. One thing I'll tell you off the field that has changed is the way they develop. They've started their academy. They're actually getting them in at a younger age. Instead of buying guys at the top of their game, they're actually buying them at a young age, like your Siwa Wongs and bringing Sammy Walker into the club and Nafahu White. They're identifying them earlier and developing through the system.
Robert Toy is another one. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the fruits of this strategy. And it's one that excites, I think, most NRL fans to see them really almost disregard their old method of going hard, signing, paying a lot of money to actually development instead of recruiting. It's gonna be an interesting few years ahead.
The one thing we didn't say, the signing of James Tedesco, that's probably their biggest signing outside of Cronk.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. When you talk
even
about
the Pierce for Cronk thing as well, like that's insane.
Oh yeah. That was
actually when you think about decades and biggest signings, I know I mentioned Katoa, but James Tedesco.
Yeah.
Like state captain, national captain, I know Cronk came in and won 2 premierships, but James Tedesco, what he's done for that club post that period is pretty special.
Yeah. The balls to move on Mitch Pearce for Cooper Cronk as well. Like, that's a ballsy move.
Yeah. That's in the top 10 stories.
It's what a big club does.
That's an idea for a future podcast. The top 10 stories of the last decade.
I love it, Chammy. We'll do that in a few weeks' time. That sounds brilliant.
That sounds great.
The Roosters missed the finals once. In 2016, during this period. They might miss the finals this year, who knows. The team sitting in second, boys, 4 premierships in a row. The last 4 premierships, just incredible. The Penrith Panthers.
Second. Okay.
Doesn't surprise me either.
I guess the Storm won a lot of premierships. What's the difference there? 165 wins compared to 188. 88. That's a big difference. I didn't think it'd be that much.
Well, they had some tough periods as well, Penrith. They had Anthony Griffin. I know Anthony Griffin was sacked and they were in the top 8 at the time, but then they had that year with the sex tape scandal and that sort of stuff that derailed their year in 2019. Yeah. It's been an up and down decade, Gus leaving, But I mean, mate, it's all about the last 4 years, really. Yeah. This decade. That's what we're going to talk about.
Bringing Ivan back.
Yeah.
The connection with him and his son. I think they arguably need each other. And obviously, we've seen plenty of examples of where father-son combinations have caused drama and stress and external headlines and people using it as a reason for defeat when maybe they're unfound, but it's an easy target to go. But I think the father-son relationship in this example makes them better. It makes that football team better. Yeah,
greatest team of the modern era. I think it's undoubted that they've taken that mantle.
Let's be honest, the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, because salary cap era makes it. Look,
Definitely NRL
as a,
era,
as a
salary
Dragons
cap
fan,
era.
I reckon even over the Dragons, given how professional the sport is now, given how competitive the sport is now.
they win another one or two, then I'll probably say that. But at the moment, I've still got St George. The St George of the 50s and 60s.
5 grand finals in a row, 4 premierships. Doesn't happen.
Well, obviously for
did,
Dragons
in
it
the
did. It is almost a different sport, though. I think they've redefined what it means to be great in the modern era.
Yeah.
Like, we thought the Roosters, wow, back to back, that was incredible at the time. Like, unheralded, it was like, wow, this team. And then no one had it on the horizon that a team was gonna double that and still going.
I still don't think that obviously the 4 premierships are the obvious one, but the way that club has been rebuilt, we talk about clubs who were on their ass. They were on their ass before Gus came and helped turn it around. They were on the brink of financial ruin. And not just that, like for someone who lives out in that area, the junior nursery, the way that's been harnessed and developed, that is the blueprint for every football club now.
Yeah.
So yes, the success is the result at the end. That's what they hold their hat on. Yeah. But what you've seen from them in the past decade in terms of building a football club from the ground up, they're the blueprint.
Yeah, they lean into that identity of who they are. They don't shy away from that. They lean into who they are, and they harness the resources available to them, which is clearly youth participation, and it's a sheer numbers game. And then with some very strict criteria around what it takes to be a first grader at the Panthers. We spoke with Matt Cameron. He gave us a bit of insight into that, but they're non-negotiables, and it is run. It is run with a formula that is non-negotiable. There is no special cases. Jerome Luai, classic example of here's what we can afford to offer him. If he doesn't accept that money, then we have to move on. There is no special exemption because we are caught out later down the track. We don't have clauses.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We are not entertaining the idea of a clause. They have a formula that works. They have criteria, what it takes to get into the first team system around education, around game knowledge, around fitness levels. And those are and if you don't pass those markers, then you don't make that team.
Missed the finals twice, 2015, 2019. Incredible. Now we move up to the team in first. Like, I think this is the most successful sporting franchise in arguably the world. They didn't miss the finals at all during this 10-year period. Every single year they're competitive. 2 premierships. Like, the Melbourne Storm.
How many minor premierships?
How many minor premierships? I'll tell you that.
Mate, Penrith obviously have the most premierships in that period, but the minor I think they've won the most minor premierships.
3 minor premierships. Okay. 2020, 2022, 2023.
Well,
I've looked at Penrith there. So minor premierships, they had one in 2016, 2017, 2019, 2021, 2024 as well.
5 minor premierships. Yeah. That's incredible. I think you're right. Probably, I don't know about the world, but the greatest sporting franchise in the country.
They haven't missed finals, mate, since 2011.
Yeah, and that was what was the year they were
that was
banned? That was 2010.
2010, they got the spoon that year. If you get rid of that spoon year, they haven't missed the final since 2003. Like, I don't think any club comes close to that.
No, they don't. Look, what Melbourne has done is absolutely incredible. I'll tell you a story. So in that 14 year. For the Dogs, we played them week 1 of the finals, and we played them off the park, and a few of us thought, like, this is the end. Melbourne are done now. We did. I think we finished 7th, they finished 6th, and we got them. We absolutely got them, and we do like. There's a few conversations that were like, I think this could be it. It's over.
We've killed them.
No, not we.
Yeah.
The fact that they only finished 6th.
Yeah.
Which is, you say 6th. They flopped out of that final. It wasn't the same level of performance that we were accustomed to playing. You knew when you were playing against the Melbourne team, they didn't have it that year.
Yeah.
And we thought it's done. And the ability for them to change how they play, the revolution or the evolution of football, the moving on from the legends, the rebirth of, the rebirth of their spine. It's phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah, no other club could lose players like Billy Slater, Cameron Smith, Cooper Cronk, and then rebuild and turn it into
transition out of that is
insane.
Yeah, you think about Harry Grant as well, and the Cheese, the big decisions that they made there, going with Grant, putting him on loan. It's incredible.
I'm a Dragons fan, and I've hated Melbourne since the '99 grand final when I walked out of that stadium crying. But he's passed Wayne Bennett as the greatest coach of all time, Craig Bellamy in my mind. They've got the greatest player of all time in Cameron Smith that they've been able to produce, and the greatest fullback of all time in Billy Slater. They've also, you mentioned the guys there, they have also let go of some of the game's best players in Greg Inglis. Israel Folau could have been anything if he stayed in the game.
Yeah, but they kind of had to, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you think about the guys they produced.
They never should have had them, really.
Well, no,
honest.
but this is where...
No, they shouldn't have had them.
They never should have kept them, yes.
Yeah.
But they still developed them all. And that's what Melbourne's the greatest achievement throughout Melbourne's 2 decades of dominance is the fact that they never bought a superstar. They created every superstar that they did.
That's fair.
They didn't buy anyone that left Melbourne was better for going there. Tell me one player that they signed in their prime. There isn't.
No.
Stefano maybe this year.
Oh, come on. That's not in the same... No. They haven't... Everyone they've produced has been... Without having a junior nursery, mind you, everyone that they've recruited, they've turned into a better footballer. And for a long time, even still, people say go to Melbourne and resurrect your career.
Yeah.
Because you know that Craig Bellamy will find something. So...
Their they lean into their environment about being a team down in Melbourne. They're close, they're connected. Like, don't look at the connection part as an oversight. Like, they are very close because they have each other. That's all they have. I think, you know what, you go back to the Panthers, and if they don't come on this resurrection, what it could have been for a decade for the Storm or the Roosters. Like, like in terms of premierships won in the decade, if Panthers don't go through this overhaul around 10 years ago or maybe 12 years ago, whenever it was, teams like the Roosters and the Storm, and obviously there's a lot of moving parts in this. It's a bit of a simplistic view because other teams within this roster would have had greater periods. Multiple teams would have had greater periods, but if it wasn't for Penrith, what it could have been for Melbourne in particular.
And the Roosters, I think, as well. Like 2020, the Roosters lost to Penrith week 1 of finals. That was when they were going for their three-peat. And they just fell short. That week 1 of finals, I remember it was a really close game. Roosters nearly got them. If they win that, that final series is a completely different story.
You know what this tells me, though? The teams at the bottom of the ladder, the top speaks for itself. But what it does tell me that the NRL, as much as the salary cap is designed to equalise, once you get down to the bottom end of the competition, it is so hard to get yourself out because you're paying overs, player manager to exploiting your football club, and the NRL, and I've held this view for a long time, have got to do more. I don't know what the system is. The greater minds can get together and work it out, but they've got to somehow make it easier for teams to get out of the doldrums because it is no good to have the Tigers, Bulldogs, Dragons, Knights always down the bottom of the ladder. Something has to happen where they provide some sort of dispensation to make it easier because you are paying it. It's not a level playing field. You're paying overs. You're paying overs, and you're getting milked by people who want to leverage the situation.
You are, but I don't know if you'll ever get to that utopia because if every football club is great, no football club is great.
Yeah,
you can't have 17 Penrith Panthers or 8 Panthers and 9 Storm.
Yeah, but you can't have 2 teams, the Titans and Tigers, between them. Only one final series in the last decade out of 20 potential appearances. Like that's
2 finals for Titans. They end up making twice.
Yeah, sorry.
But when you compare the model of our competition against other competitions across the planet, like I think we've got it pretty good. When you think of like who wins the Premier League, like some team, I know people will point to Leicester. Look at the French league. I'm talking soccer here. Germany.
They're non-salary cap sports though. as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes it's better the devil you know than the one you don't.
We got to let Chammy go because he's got to go. He's a busy man. He's got some calls to make. He's got some news to break. But it's been great to have you here.
Thanks, boys.
You thought you killed Jimmy. You thought you killed him in 2014, was it? Or 2016? When do you think you killed the Storm?
It was the 2014 final series.
Well, in this decade, they didn't finish lower than 5th.
yeah, I know. No, I didn't say we. I
No,
thought
I
that-
know,
I
they
thought
were-
that
the
they
dynasty was done.
Yeah,
I know what you
thought
mean.
The
I know what
dynasty
you
was
mean.
done.
I know what you
Yeah, I
mean.
really did. And I think a lot of people shared that view. The fact that they finished 6th in that year and that finals game, they just look gone. And a lot of teams, maybe they needed that.
Yeah.
Some teams need that instead of maybe making a grand final that year. They don't examine their processes, but they clearly did.
Jimmy, he said I'm a busy man.
Yeah. Look, gotta let him go.
Go. See you, mate.